Welcome back to Behind the Blueprint. It's your host, Dominic Kuza, this morning, and I am really looking forward to talking about what I wanted to talk about today. A lot of people are liking the podcast, at least for whoever's listening to it. Even if it doesn't get a ton of views, I like it because it's a nice little insight and also an outlet for me as well. But there are a couple things that I did want to talk about today. And one of the main things that I wanted to talk about was some of the stuff that I've been posting lately. I'm not just a science guy, right? I believe a lot in developing really good, like big personal development stuff. I've always been a fan of that. That's always been something that I've been really like, connected to. I posted a couple things like the last couple days. Recently, the friction talk, everybody really liked that. I got a ton of responses with the friction, from my email list, from the Blueprint email list. That if you want to join, I'm doing a longevity newsletter right now. It's going to be kind of a series about longevity, the different sciences involved with longevity and everything anti-aging. So if you guys want to join that, that's just in my bio on Instagram. You could join that newsletter. But, some of the other stuff that I posted recently was the stress thing, talking about like uncontrollable and controllable stressors. And somebody DM'd me, and it was interesting because he said something like, I feel like people who don't know what's wrong usually just blame like stress, I believe it was, like something along those lines. Like he said, here it is. So I personally feel like you aren't growing because your stress thing is overused. And then he said, brother, nobody goes through life without stress just because they decide to bodybuild. People have kids, real life going on. And then he said, so no great bodybuilder ever had stress in their life, question mark. And, I think that's a whole bunch of, listen, I understand the impact stress can have on our body, but I don't necessarily think it's always the stress, rather your response and inability to manage the stress more so is the issue, right? I think over the last 10 years, we've, as a society, have just gotten a lot less capable. Our capability of managing stress has dropped down a lot. And I think that actually comes with culture. I think that comes with societal changes and cultural changes where now it's something where it's like, oh no, it's okay. It's okay. You could take the day off. You're stressed. You're having a hard day at work. You could just go home. Like that didn't exist 10 years ago, And I think the schooling system is another part where we're seeing some of that, right? Like where kids are allowed to like remove themselves from classes if they're feeling stressed and it's not that I don't think some of those things are right. Obviously, we don't want stress to push somebody, to a breaking point, but I do think there is a happy medium of how much more resilience to stress some people would have developed if they were forced to go through certain things. So I think with stress, like the main, I don't like really believe in like always just focusing on reducing like your total bucket of stress all the time, right? There's levers we can pull. We'll talk about them, but I think some of the things that people are just kind of missed the mark on is like removing all stressors as quickly as possible. But don't train, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. It's not realistic. That's not real life. Right? What's that person supposed to do when it's time to start training again, when it's time to start doing cardio again? I just don't think it's realistic, right? And then one thing that I have trouble with is getting told to do these things with kids. A lot of the coaches out there coaches, experts, Instagram influencers, whoever they are, right, that usually recommend like really extreme things like that don't know what it's like to have kids, right? And it's not to say that it's not doable with kids. Like that's for sure something you can do. There's probably things that you can manage while having kids to get your stress down as well. But there's a lot of unpredictability with kids, right? Like yesterday morning, Blake just like had like liquid diarrhea all over his leg. That's an unpredictability. I can't predict that that's going to happen, right? And then, to be told like you have to control all your stressors, you have to reduce them as much as possible. It's a lot easier said than done, especially with kids in the mix. So something to just always kind of do is if you're working with somebody who has kids and you don't have kids, take a step back and try to recognize that their day to day is probably not the same as your day to day. You know, there's those funny memes of like my wife sent me one. It was like a Barbie doll with all her hair disheveled and it said like when a 24-year-old fitness influencer tells you we have the same 24 hours but yet I have 3 kids. And it's like, no, we don't, right? Because you don't. It's way different. It's a whole different world. You know, I experienced that firsthand. It was something that I had a decent grasp on before I had kids, and that's why I think I was able to coach parents so well. But that comes from just having like a really tight knit family, but and like a lot of cousins with kids and friends with kids. But yeah, just that's one thing with the stress component and controlling those stressors that you have to be a little bit more aware of. You know, especially if you're trying to be like a really involved parent, right? I think there's some cases where like there might be a kid like out of wedlock or you know, it's like a custody thing where you're not seeing the kid as much. Like yes, it's obviously a lot easier but like when the kid's in the house every single day, when you're raising this kid, when you want to be present, right? That's one of the biggest benefits right now that I think is like, I mean, everybody can see it, but like dads are trying to be so much more involved with kids than the previous generation, right? And that's an added stressor on top. And we have to control that and understand that there's pluses and there's gives and takes, right? So I have to take care of myself because if I can't take care of myself, then what use am I to my family, right? So just like the analogy I always like using, one of my best friends said it to me once. Clark said this to me. He said, when the oxygen mask falls in an airplane, they instruct you to put yours on first so that you can help other people, right? Because if you can't breathe and you can't do things, how are you going to help the person next to you? How are you who might be your kid, your wife, whatever? So it's a good way to kind of look at like you do need to make sure that you are taking care of yourself first in some of these situations. Now, obviously, there's sacrifices that need to be made, but it's a healthy balance, right? You know, some days, for example, I try to stay home in the mornings now instead of working out to help Dina pack up the kids, get them out the house so I could see them, spend some time with them before the day starts. Then I'll go throughout my day. Then usually I'll train. Sometimes that turns into me not seeing them again before bed. But that's me prioritizing the best balance that I can have between being there with them and then also taking care of my physical fitness because now that's something that I recognize is very important. There's some checks and balances with that. I could talk for hours just on that topic alone. Yeah, I mean, I think with stress, really, we have to look at it like I posted yesterday, just in 2 buckets: your uncontrollables and your controllables. People have been saying that forever. But some people that I follow have said that. Will say that. I mean, dude, that topic is literally everywhere. Controllables versus uncontrollables, and trying to exercise mentally how to distinguish which is which. It can help you a lot with stress management, right? And it's easier said than done, of course, right? Just like everything we do. But I think some of the things that we really want to focus on is, understanding what levers we have to pull and what levers we don't have to pull. So, if we look at, some of these uncontrollables like weather, right? Traffic, I'm reading from my post, other people's behavior, unexpected work fires, your kid getting sick, right? Past mistakes, market conditions, if you're a trader or an investor, right? Trying to control any of that stuff just makes you more tense, right? But a lot of people have control issues, right? Where they need to have control over as much as possible, and that's just not realistic. And then that adds a whole nother layer of stress. But these are things that, like, over the years I've been able to, like, I still haven't mastered it, but I've been able to really let go of a lot of that stuff and not focus on trying to control any of it, which in turn has helped me a ton with my stress load. This is probably the least stressed. This is probably the busiest I've ever been, holding the highest positions I've ever held, and the least stressed I've ever been, which is kind of interesting, right? His workload is the highest it's ever been, right? His responsibilities are the highest they've ever been. Brand positioning, authoritative positioning, all these things are at the highest they've ever been for my career, right? They might not be for somebody else's career, but they're the highest for my career so far. But this is also the least stressed I've ever been. It's also the most I've enjoyed my work. But I think a lot of that has to do with I've been able to practice and really hone in on letting go of uncontrollable stressors. And then controllable stressors, right? The things we do have control over: what time I go to bed, what time I wake up, right? How well did I drink my water that day, right? Did I caffeine time inappropriately and now I'm awake at night, Am I training? I think training is huge. I mean, I'm going to take a second to talk on that because a lot of people are focused on money, right? Which again, there's nothing wrong with making money. I'm all on board, right? I want to make money just like the next person. But I made a promise to myself that I will not sacrifice money for my physical well-being anymore. Because if you start to do that, you're going to notice a lot of things start to feel miserable. And no matter how much money you're making, it just kind of does it just doesn't feel that good anymore. But then you look at yourself in the mirror in your clothes and you just don't have the same confidence anymore. I personally think I had a huge shift in my career trajectory over 2023 to 2025. And I will attest that I think 90% of that happened because I got my fitness back together. Because I was done bodybuilding, I had no clue what to do. I wasn't taking PEDs anymore. And I just couldn't work out anymore. I was like, what am I doing in the gym if I'm not bodybuilding, right? Go to Vitamin Shop Expo, Vitamin Shop Conference with Revive Team, see Dom, Matt, all these guys go running, right? And then I'm like, okay, bodybuilders have this like weird, I don't know what it is to be completely honest, but bodybuilders have this weird, like, if you're not bodybuilding, you shouldn't even be working out kind of thought process. They think every other angle of fitness is stupid other than bodybuilding, which, okay, that's fine. I'm sure CrossFitters feel the same about bodybuilders, right? But I don't look at fitness like that. I think fitness is a great outlet for a lot of different reasons. But go to that. And then I adopt this whole like running thing for a while. And then I was like strictly running, lost a ton of muscle, which was actually purposely done. I didn't need that muscle anymore. Then started getting into like the more hybrid stuff. Then I found Hyrox and then it just kind of snowballed. But the things that were happening was I had more energy. I lost a ton of muscle. That was unnecessary muscle at the time. I also then started building endurance like I've never built endurance before. I'm able to do more stuff around the house without getting tired. I need less caffeine to get through the day. Everything just got better. Like everything. My productivity got better. I was sharper. I wasn't dependent on stimulants, right? I still do. I have such good balance with it now. And I think that's a big part of why I can get so much done, why I've been able to grow the businesses as quickly as possible, like over the last 2 years. I mean, if I look at my percentages, my percentage growth over the last 2 years, it's got to be at least 300%. And I really attest a lot of that to getting my physical fitness back online. And it's not even like I don't compete in anything, right? I've wanted to do some Hyroxes. I signed up for 2. I tore my pec, which, looking at kind of like what that looks like for next year, maybe I'll race something for next year. I'm not trying to become a Hyrox world champion, right? But just the environment could be nice to be in and stuff like that. But yeah, like I don't compete in anything, but I still go to the gym 4 days a week, 5 days a week, depending on the week. And I balance all that, right? So I think that's important. So to everybody out there who's chasing money, chasing all of these things, I want you to take a second and I want you to really hone in and focus on your physical fitness and making sure you don't let go of that as you start to chase these career thresholds. So just keep that in mind for me, please. Now, phone boundaries, right? I'm really strict on that. Like if you are a client of mine, you message me after a certain time or on the weekend, like after a certain time, I'm not answering you until the next business day. Some people might say like, well, people pay for you to have access to you all the time, blah, blah, blah. That's unrealistic. Nobody's 24/7. I'm sorry. You're full of shit if you think you're 24/7. That's just not real. That's not real. And I'm not going to sit here and answer you quickly just for the sake of saying I answered you within 5 minutes, when if I took a couple hours to answer you, I could give you a much better answer, right? That's proper. I don't think the other way is proper. And that's again, my clients, at least to my knowledge, don't have any issues with it. They understand that I have a lot of things going on and they would rather me give a thoughtful response than just responding very quickly for the sake of responding very quickly. So phone boundaries are very important. Otherwise, you're going to burn out. I want you guys to consider something right now. All right. A lot of coaches listen to this. A lot of business people listen to this. A client pays you $300 a month, right? That's $10 a day. They pay you $10 a day to coach them. And the expectation is to answer a phone call at 11:30 at night. I mean, I'm sorry. I don't really think that that's realistic. Right. My coffee with gingerbread cold foam and 2 pumps of sugar-free vanilla is $9.67. right? So like it's not that I think it's wrong. It's that I think the expectations and the realism of things don't align all the time. But again, I would rather be much more quality than just speed over that. So that's a big thing. A workload planning, right? Time blocking, making sure you have your tasks all divided up throughout the day. These are very important things. Money habits and then who you spend time with, right? There's a lot of people who spend time with friends thinking it's good, it's healthy, which it is, right? There's good statistics and good research that talks about, making sure you have like a group of friends that you communicate with, that you hang out with, specifically for men, that can help with like dementia and Alzheimer's down the road. Societal interaction is very big for preventing dementia and Alzheimer's, but it's not all the time, right? It can't be all the time because then you're not getting things done, and then that adds stress load, that adds tension. So keep that in mind. I think there's some really good things, right? Is this my responsibility or my reality? That's a really easy question to ask yourself when you're dealing with the stressor at hand, right? Reality, things that you can't change, you have to just adapt to them, right? I always say, is this within my control, or is this something that I can navigate and shift? No, it's not. Okay, then I just kind of have to let it go, and I got to kind of ride this wave, right? You're not going to swim against the wave as it's crashing. You have to ride with the wave as it's crashing. Responsibilities, right? The things that I can directly influence, right, then I can act on them. Just that little bit of a reframe there can help you a lot with your emotional load, right? But this, now getting back to what I talked about earlier, I don't think it's a good idea to just drop all your stressors as aggressively as possible. I just don't think that that's realistic, because you have to look at physiology in this, right? Physiology, we know of a concept called hormesis, right? Or hormetic process, right? What is hormetic process, right? Hormesis, right, is when you are approached with a controlled stressor, but it makes you stronger. It makes you, it makes your body adapt at a cellular level. These are important processes that happen inside of our body that are good, right? A hormetic stress is not a bad thing, right? But too much stress obviously is. But that's why I don't think it's realistic and proper for us to focus on reducing all and removing all stressors as aggressively as possible. Now, I understand there's unique situations where if you're treated with, if there's a huge stressor, right, like a work thing going on, maybe a relationship thing going on, and you're just the coach, right? Yeah, maybe you got to pull the lever like, hey, I don't want you to train this week, or hey, I don't want you to do cardio this week. That's fine, right? Because there's things that are going on right now that you have zero influence on. You are not probably even equipped to help them with those. It's not what your focus of stress control needs to be on. Let's focus on what we can control, right? I have a client right now. He has like an autoimmune condition, and he was noticing like maybe the flare-ups are starting. A lot of autoimmune flares are stress related, right? His work stress is through the roof, right? But what do we have control over? Hey, why don't you skip the cardio this week? Because sometimes I look at it like, if I tell some people to like completely remove training, both cardio and weightlifting, does that create even more stress when they're just sitting home and then they're thinking too much, or they think they have more time on their plate and then they're trying to navigate all that extra time? I think there's a healthy balance with that, and there's a way to approach that. I think that's important. Had a consult yesterday for a gut protocol with somebody. Again, some people like to like really say like, hey, during this gut protocol, no training at all. Don't get your heart rate over certain thresholds, which again, I understand the applicability, but for some people, I don't think that that's realistic. This guy that I talked to, there's no way that would ever happen. He is addicted to training. He loves training. He trains very hard, very aggressively. So really my consensus was, hey, I don't think telling you to do every other day training is really realistic for you. So we got to figure out how to control your intensity and everything that you're doing, because obviously that compounding stressor of training intensity every single day like that does make it harder to heal, does make it harder to do these things, but there's a way to there's a way to control that, right? So that was kind of a troubleshooting thing that we did together yesterday. I think that's where the hormetic response is good, though, when you're treated with the right amount of stress and allowing yourself to deal with a little bit more stress than normal. It applies a challenge. The system is temporarily stressed, and that's when our adaptation starts to kick in. And then that's why we see people get stronger, more resilient, and more capable. I've just noticed like there's people out there that I've worked with, that I've talked to, that are ones, I don't want to say like run away from stress, but like shut down really aggressively with so when stress is present. It's just a repetitive thing for them. It just keeps happening nonstop all the time. So that's something to just kind of keep in mind with stressors. Now, I think, if you go back to my posts, I have some practical exercises. You have the 2-column audit, right? Everything's stressing you out. And then on the right side, you'll just label. So, like with my post the other day, I have some practical exercises in there for you, right? Left side, right side, right? Label on the left side, just write everything that's stressing you out. On the right side, put if it's controllable or not controllable. And then move all your energy to the left column, right? So we got to look at the left column completely, and then we just got to see, okay, what is controllable, what is not controllable, and then kind of itemize it. 90-second rule, right? When you feel overwhelmed, right, take 90 seconds, long exhale, slow nasal breathing, right? You're clearing adrenaline at that point. I think this is important, man, because like a lot of you are dealing with a lot of stress, but I don't know if it's necessarily you're dealing with a lot of stress or you're just dealing with a lot of mismanaged stress. So those are some things that I think are really important to talk about. Because if you're able to compartmentalize your stress and properly put it into buckets, your nervous system is not, your sympathetic nervous system, your autonomic nervous system, you're not constantly stimulated in this fight or flight mode. And a lot of the time, stressors cause this flight mode, not so much a fight mode. You're able to, think more clearly. You don't react. Reactions are terrible, right? When you're under a huge stress load, you react more than you logically think things through. So that's important. So yeah, just really make sure we're doing non-reactive responses, right? We want to make sure that we're not reacting based on emotion because of a stress load, and more so thinking things through logically. That's what I wanted to talk to you guys about today. I think that was a good conversation about stress and controlling stress. And I'm glad everybody's enjoying this podcast. I can talk science shop all day, but this stuff is good too. I like talking about this stuff because I think a lot of people need to hear it, need to reinforce it. Even if it's not your first time hearing something like this, I think the reinforcement of hearing it again and again, I think that helps a lot. So thank you guys. Please like, subscribe, share, do all the fun stuff. I appreciate everything that you guys are doing by listening. And I look forward to talking to you guys next week.